This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Abam, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to join you now before the Yom HaKadosh, before Yom HaKippurim, Bershus the Rashiva, Rabbi Brown, and the Manalim and Rabbeim. Thank you so much. I don't see everybody's face, but I heard some familiar voices. So again, it's really a great pleasure to hear from everyone again. I've had the zchus to speak for the Masifta, I believe, 3 years now, and I'm very honored to keep up the relationship. I want to thank my Yedid Nefesh, Reb Zev, for making the connection again, and we want to wish all the Rabbeim and the Rosh Yeshiva and all the friends of the Yeshiva and all the Talmidim, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, should be mevarich everyone with the year of good health, success, happiness, bracha v'hatzlacha, lanu l'chol Yisrael, amen. Now, I don't know if you're familiar, one of the great educators of our time, Rabbi Beryl Wein, a very interesting personality. He is a historian, he was a Rav, he was a Rosh Yeshiva, he's actually now a producer, he's a columnist, someone who literally, you have permission to record, somebody literally who has influenced the lives of thousands of people in various venues. And he was once in the airport, he was flying somewhere on a speaking engagement. Let me just close this. And somebody notices him, and somebody was very excited to finally see Rabbi Wein, and he comes running to Rabbi Wein. He says, "Is that you, Rabbi? Is that you?" Now, Rabbi Wein, although he's a very prominent individual, he's not somebody who enjoys the adulation and the attention, so he tries to ignore it, and he nods his head sheepishly, and he says, yeah, and he sort of walks away, and the guy doesn't let up. The guy says, "I can't believe it's you. I can't tell you literally changed my life. You've opened up my eyes. I've read so many of your books. I've heard so many of your tapes and CDs, and so many of my friends read your books, and Sfarim, in my shul alone, there must be 12 people that read your books while the rabbi's speaking." And the guy doesn't stop, and finally Rabbi Wein had enough of all the attention, and he says, Tzeischem l'shalom, have a safe flight, and he is walking away, and the guy doesn't let up. He comes after, he says, "Rabbi, I know behind every great man is an even greater woman, so do me a favor. Please send my sincere gratitude to Rebbitzin friend." And Rabbi Wein looks the guy straight in the face, and he says, "I don't usually travel with her, but the next time I see her, I'll be sure to let her know." So, I hope you get it. But Marv Rabbeisai, dear friends, in life, it's possible for someone really to miss the boat, to completely miss the boat. And sometimes the repercussions are not really that severe. Sometimes it doesn't really make that big of a difference. But sometimes, if a person does not capitalize on a fundamental lesson, on an important lesson, the repercussions can be for all eternity. So I would like to begin tonight's shiur by asking a very simple question. This is a question that any thinking person really needs. Yes, you also have permission to record. Thank you for the message. Every thinking person has the real responsibility to ask themselves during this time of the year. We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our loving Father, and whatever He does for us is for our benefit, is to help us, to give us bracha, to help us grow. And there seems to be something highly questionable about the order of the Yomim Noraim, because we all know that Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Hadin. Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. And our entire year is decided. How much money we're going to make, what is our health going to be like. Everything about the outcome of our life is decided on Rosh Hashanah. When is the Rebbeinu Shalom going to put an end to this virus? When is life going to return to normalcy? Everything about this world is decided on Rosh Hashanah. And then, of course, 10 days later is Yom Kippurim. And what happens on Yom Kippur? The Rebbeinu Shalom atones for our sin. He forgives our averos. Shoygeg, Mezid, whatever we do tshuva for, the Rebbeinu Shalom atones for our sin. And if you think about it for a moment, it makes you realize it seems to be backward. The order of the Yom Naram seems to be completely backward. Because how does Hashem judge us on Rosh Hashanah? What are we being judged on? What is the judgment based on? We know the judgment is based on one thing and one thing only. Mitzvahs and Averos. Someone who has majority mitzvahs, roiv mitzvahs, he's nichtav v'nechtam l'chaim. He's signed and sealed for life. Someone who chas v'shalom has roiv avonos, so his fate, his outcome, is not good. And then you have the Beinonim, those who are in between, who are 50-50. But we know the judgment of Rosh Hashanah is based on one thing and one thing only, and that is our mitzvahs and averos. And then 10 days later, the Rebbeinu Shalom gives us a day to atone for our averos. Isn't that backward? Isn't it ipcha mistabra? Just the opposite. Shouldn't the Rebbeinu Shalom first give us a day of Yom Kippur? This way we'll atone for our averos. We'll wipe our neshamos clean. We'll be able to get slicha, mechila, and kapara. Then, 10 days later, the Rebbeinu Shalom should judge us, and we'll be in a very good position. In America, we say we'll be sitting pretty, and everybody will be roiv mitzvahs. Here you have a guy. If he would start off the year with Yom Kippur, let's say he has 500 mitzvahs and 550 averos. So if the year starts off with Rosh Hashanah, it's not going to be a good year. Wouldn't it be more logical for the Rebbeinu Shalom to start off the year with Yom Kippur? This way we'll cleanse, the guy will cleanse himself from the 550 averos, and then 10 days later we'll have a Rosh Hashanah, and the Rebbeinu Shalom will see, wow, he has 500 mitzvahs and no averos. I mean, what's the chachma of giving a Yom Kippur after a Rosh Hashanah? It's almost pointless. It almost defeats the purpose. Let the Rebbeinu Shalom first give us a Yom Kippur, and then give us a Rosh Hashanah. This, Rabbi Sai, this, friends, is the question of Rav Itzela Petterberg, Rav Yitzchak Blazer, the great disciple, the great student of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Why did the Rebbeinu Shalom create Yom Kippur after Rosh Hashanah? Well, one good question deserves another, and in my humble opinion, the question we are about to ask is literally the most important question that any human being needs to ask themselves in the course of their lifetime. Because this question will cut to the bottom of what we're doing here in this world. And understanding the answer to this question will literally plot the course of the rest of our life. You know, if a thinking person looks around the world, looks at creation, looks at the world in general, one thing that is blatant and obvious is that wherever you look, we see plan and purpose. Nothing is coincidental. For example, let's take a simple fruit tree. Let's take an apple. Let's take an orange. All the fruit, before they're ripe, they're all green. They don't look attractive. They don't look like something you want to eat, and you barely notice them. They're camouflaged in the leaves. But as soon as the fruit becomes ripe and fit to eat, all of a sudden, they become a bright color. All of a sudden, they call out to you, eat me. They're attractive. They're noticeable. Why? How is this? Is it a coincidence that when the fruit is not ripe, you barely notice it and you don't want to eat it, and when the fruit is ripe, all of a sudden you recognize it and you want to eat it? Is that a coincidence? Of course not. We see the plan and purpose of the Creator. So for example, does anybody have an apple on them? No? I can't believe you came to the show without an apple. Wow! Hashgacha pratis, you wouldn't believe it. I just happened to have an apple on me. It's just amazing, the hashgacha pratis during that Sessi Mei Teshuva. You see this red apple? Well, before it was ripe, it was green. Who wants to eat that? You don't even notice it on the tree. It's hidden among the leaves. It doesn't even look enticing. And slowly, as it turns ripe, the Rebbeinu Shalom paints it a very bright red. And you say, hey, that looks good. It looks almost like candy. And you notice it on the tree. It's amazing. By the way, it's the same thing with an orange. When an orange is not ripe, It's green. You don't recognize it. It does not look enticing. It does not look attractive. But as soon as it's ripe, does anybody have an orange on them? Can't believe you guys. You came to my shiur without an orange? Unbelievable. Hashgacha pratis. Look what I happen to have. It's amazing, the hashgacha today. I'm really having a good day. Before the orange was ripe, it's green. You don't notice it. You don't recognize it. It's unappealing. And all of a sudden, the Ribbon Shalom paints it orange, and it's enticing, and it's attractive, and you notice it. And this is something that's apparent throughout the world. Every detail of the world is perfectly orchestrated, crafted, arranged, with fine-tuned to precision. Exactly, the Ribbon Shalom knows exactly when to paint the fruit red and when to paint it orange. So you'll ask, wait a second, but a watermelon doesn't have an attractive color on the outside. It's bland green on the outside. It's only red on the inside. How would we notice it? And the answer is, here too we see the great wisdom of the Creator. Because a watermelon, if it's going to be red on the outside, you're going to be walking in your garden, you're going to see a red watermelon, you're going to pounce on it, you're going to jump on it, you're going to open it up, but a watermelon is enough to feed like 5 to 10 people, and you're going to eat it, and the rest is going to go to waste. So the Ribbon Shalom does not paint it this exciting color. So it engenders patience. It makes you patient. So you bring the watermelon home, and you're not really that excited to eat it yet, and then you cut it open, and wow, it's red on the inside, and now everybody's in the house, and everybody's ready to eat that watermelon. So when a food is not really packaged for one person, it's packaged for a lot of people. The Ribbon Shalom did not paint it red on the outside, he painted it red on the inside. So you'll ask, well, what about a potato? A potato is for one person. Why didn't the Ribbon Shalom paint it a nice, interesting color? And the answer is very simple, because a potato is raw. And you can't eat it. If you eat a raw potato, you're going to get a stomachache. So the Ribbon Shalom knew that he's only going to paint the orange, he's only going to paint the apple, that you could eat them raw. But a fruit or a vegetable that you can't eat raw, the Ribbon Shalom does not paint it that exciting color. Clearly, every detail of creation is with great plan and purpose. That means whoever made it, whoever created it, endowed it with great wisdom and great chachma. Eoiv says, Mi besari echze Eloika, that from my flesh I see the Ribbon Shalom. The greatest wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu we see in our own bodies, our own flesh. I'll give you an example. The strongest, most powerful acids in the world are found in the stomach, in the human stomach. A person could eat, I don't know, they have it in America, everybody's into steak. Everybody likes to eat basar in America. So you can eat a steak. What are you eating? You're eating the stomach of an animal. And your acids are able to digest the stomach of the animal. By the way, a stomach acid is so powerful, if you were to put it on a table, it would burn a hole through the table. That's how powerful the stomach acid is. So while the stomach acid is burning, digesting another animal's stomach, why doesn't it burn a hole through the eater's stomach? How is it that the body is able to contain that acid? The answer is it's great chachma. The Ribbon Shalom made the most powerful acid in the world that it could digest and consume the meat of another animal, and it doesn't digest a person's own meat. Friends, we could go on and on. We could speak about the wisdom in the human body for hours and hours and days. We could speak about it our whole life, and it would be a never-ending discussion of the wisdom of the Creator. But there is one problem in creation. There's one problem with this world. Because all the fruits are perfect, and all the vegetables are perfect, and all the trees are perfect, and all the animals are perfect, but there's one experiment, one creation that God made that seems to be a big failure. And you know what that experiment is? Man. Man seems to be an experiment gone haywire. You know why? Because the Ribbon Shalom seemed to have created in man a phenomenon and a feature that is inexplicable. We can't explain it. We cannot wrap our heads around it. And that is, a human being has this phenomenon and has this instinct that a human being is never happy. A human being is never satisfied. No matter how much money a person has, they always want more. No matter how nice your house is, you always want a nicer house. No matter how good your food is, you always want better food. No matter where you live, you want to go somewhere else. People in the East, they want to travel to the West. People in the West, they want to travel to the East. The most successful people in the world are dissatisfied. And literally, because of this very deep dissatisfaction, this leads to all kinds of destructive behavior, addictions, abuse, all the ills of mankind, all the ills of society are rooted in the fact that a person is literally never satisfied and never happy. And by the way, this phenomenon is unique to man. This phenomenon does not exist by any animal. If you give a cow enough grass and a shady spot under a tree, the animal will be happy forever and ever. And yet a human being is constantly unhappy, searching, yearning, seeking, looking. Why? Why did the Ribbon Shalom make a person constantly seeking, yearning, unhappy? Why did the Ribbon Shalom do this to us? It seems like we're a mistake. The Ribbon Shalom got everything perfect. The world is 99.9% perfect, except us. A human being seems to be creation gone haywire. And the answer to this question is literally the most important piece of information that our sages have given over to us, that the Torah has taught us. And that is, if a person mistakenly thinks that they were created for Olam Hazeh, for this world, then man is a creation gone haywire. Then man is a big mistake. Then man is a big error. If a person was created to be here for 70, 80, 90 years, and the kever was the end all, so man is an abysmal failure. Because man is never happy, man is never satisfied, he's always yearning, he always wants more. You have $100, you want $200, you have $1,000, you want $2,000, you have this, you want that. But the Chachamim tell us, don't blow it. Don't make a mistake, because this literally is the most important decision that every human being has to make in their life, and that is, if a person thinks that he was created for this world, then a person will take one direction in life. But the Chachamim tell us, don't blow this one. Don't make this error. Because if you make this error, you're not just going to be calling Rabbi Beryl Wine Rabbi Friend, but this is going to have repercussions for all eternity. And that is, Chazal tell us the 7 most important words, perhaps in the Torah Shabbat Peh. Ha'olam hazeh doime lefroizdar b'fnei ha'olam haba. That this world is not where it's at. We weren't created for this world. We weren't created to eat. We weren't created to drink. We weren't created to have money or to have pleasure. If we were, we are an abysmal failure. But the Ribbon Shalom created us with a Neshama. And the Mesilas Yesharim gives us the famous analogy. You know the story? There was a villager, and there was an interesting shidduch. This gruff and rough villager who lives in the forest, who lives in a hut, in a shabby hut. He marries the princess, and he takes her back to the hut after the chasana, and he wants to make her happy. So he cooks up his best stew in this old rusty pot, and he throws in beans, and he throws in potatoes. And she's smelling it, and she says, "What? You call that food?" And he doesn't understand. Why is his porridge not making her happy? And the reason she's not happy is because she comes from a different world. She's used to a different currency. She's used to the fine food, to the cuisine of the palace. So his pedestrian, his simple food doesn't mean anything to her. And he says to her, what is it? What do you want? Do you want music? Is it music that you want? So he takes a wooden spoon and he starts banging on his metal pot. And she says, what is this? This is loud noise. And he says, no, this is beautiful music. And she can't even listen to it because she's used to the fine, elegant music of the palace. So too says Mesilas Yesharim on the pasuk, V'gam hanefesh lo simale. What is our most valuable commodity in this world? Is it our house? Is it our car? What is the most important thing that we have in this world? The most important thing is our neshama. And our neshama is a chelek Eloka mimal. Our neshama is a piece of the Ribbono Shel Olam. And the neshama comes down to this world, and the neshama looks around, and the body tries to make the neshama happy. And the neshama is miserable, and the neshama is despondent, and the neshama can't take it. And the body says, what do you want? You want food? And the body tries to make the neshama happy with food, but food doesn't do anything for the neshama. And the body says, do you want money? Do you want pleasure? What could I give you, neshama, to make you happy? But the neshama is overqualified. There is nothing physical in this world that gives the neshama any satisfaction whatsoever. So why did the Ribbono Shel Olam do this to us? He ruined us. He put us in the world where we can never be happy. There's no breakfast, lunch, or dinner that can make your soul happy. There's no pleasure in this world that can make your soul happy. Why didn't God make us like a cow? A cow could be happy all day long. Why did Hashem give us a soul that, if you think about it, is the cause of all the ills of mankind? All the ills of society is because man is dissatisfied and man is unhappy. So why did the Ribbono Shel Olam put us here? We're overqualified for this world. And herein lies the most important piece of information that Chazal have given us access to. And that is the fact that Hashem made us overqualified for this world is the greatest chesed the Ribbono Shel Olam ever gave us. Because if we would be like a cow, we would spend the rest of our lives eating breakfast and eating lunch and eating dinner and making money and looking for pleasure and more pleasure and more pleasure. And if we would do that, we would waste our lives. So you know what the Ribbono Shel Olam did for us? He gave us a great chesed. He gave us a neshama. And the neshama only gets satisfaction from one currency. And that is the currency of the Ribbono Shel Olam. The currency where it came from. Divine currency. Limud Torah. Doing mitzvahs. Doing chesed. Working on gaining yiras shamayim. Working on your midas. That is the only thing that gives the neshama satisfaction in this world. So the Ribbono Shel Olam, on the one hand, put us in a very dangerous world. Because this is a very important decision to make. What are you interested in this world? Are you interested in Olam Hazeh, or are you interested in Olam Haba? That is the decision that every human being has to make. And that is the most important decision that we will ever make. One could pursue Olam Hazeh, but the neshama will be screaming in agony. One could pursue only Olam Haba, but you do have to deal with a body and a guf. So one has to be able to use the chachma, to be able to live in this world and feed the body and give the body enough to make it enough happy that you could keep your eye on the goal, which is Olam Haba. So in a way, we live in a very dangerous world because the unhappiness of the neshama leads people to destructive behavior. But if a person recognizes where that dissatisfaction is coming from, where it's rooted, what it's sourced in, it's actually the greatest chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the Ribbono Shel Olam wants us to harness and channel and utilize the longing of the neshama to acquire what we were put in this world for, and that is to amass limud Torah, doing mitzvahs, masim tovim, midos tovos, and yiras shamayim. Now, I'll tell you the truth, this topic is rarely spoken about. Who speaks about Olam Haba? It's become like a dirty topic. You can't even talk about it. Olam Haba, you could go to drashas and speeches, and you're going to hear Torah and Pilpulim and Lamdus and everything, you name it under the sun. But the subject that the Yetzer Hara exerts the most energy not to speak about is Olam Haba. Because the Yetzer Hara recognizes that if a person were to ever see with clarity what the question they have to ask themselves is, and what the decision that we have to make, the Yetzer Hara knows this is literally a springboard to propel a person in the proper direction in life. Now you'll say, of course, that's what we had to bring in a speaker from America to talk about Olam Haba. Olam Haba is the simplest concept in the Torah. Everybody knows about Olam Haba. Every day I see Ani Mamin. I believe in Olam Haba. Of course, this is Judaism 101. But the difference is we all know about it. But do we think about it? Is it part of our reality? Is it something that is on our mind? Are we worried about it? Are we looking for it? Are we trying to get it? That's the question. To what level is Olam Haba a reality to us? I want to tell you a little story. In the city of Slutsk, there was a great Rav, the Ridvaz, Rabbi Yaakov David Wolofsky. He wrote the famous commentary on the Yushalmi, the Ridvaz. And there was a doctor in the city of Slutsk. He was a shtickle apikairos, a Freya doctor. And he would take a walk in the late afternoon to get some fresh air. And one Thursday night, he noticed that the butcher shop, customers were walking quickly out of the butcher shop. And he goes close to the butcher shop, and he hears the butcher, he's almost screaming at his customers. And the butcher's saying, "You have to leave, you have to leave. I cannot give you meat now, I cannot give you meat now." And the customers are saying, "What do you mean? It's Erev Shabbos, and if we don't get it now..." When he said, "Listen, it's Mincha Marav now, come back in an hour. I need to go to Mincha Marav." And this really bothered the doctor. The doctor comes into the store, he turns to the butcher, he says, "I don't understand, you're not a wealthy guy. This is your busiest time of the week. This is your parnasa for the week. You're sending away customers, they might not ever come back." So the butcher says, "Look, I got to go to shul. They could come back in an hour. And parnasa comes from Shamayim." And then the butcher says, "And after all, I need to worry about my Olam Haba." And the doctor laughs. "Ha! Olam Haba! There's no such thing." So the butcher said, "Yeah, for you there's no such thing, because maybe you don't do mitzvahs. But I'm hoping that one day I'm going to get Olam Haba." So this really echoed the butcher. It really bothered this doctor. And the doctor mocks him. He says, "Really? You want Olam Haba? You're so interested in Olam Haba? I am prepared to sell you all my Olam Haba for 1 ruble." The butcher says, "Great." So the butcher gives him a ruble, and the doctor says, "Okay, fine, take my Olam Haba." And the butcher runs out of the store to catch a Mincha Marav. Many years pass. 25 years pass. The butcher's an old man. A woman walks into his store, a well-dressed woman. They exchange some greetings. And she says, "Let me tell you why I'm here. My husband came to me in a dream. My husband was the doctor. And he was shaking, he was trembling. He said he was there in the Bezdin Shalmala. And they were the scales, the mitzvahs and the averos, and he said it wasn't even close. He said he had roiv avoinos. And he said they were giving me a very harsh sentence in the Bezdin Shalmala, and he was screaming, "I don't understand! I cured so many people, I didn't charge them money, I saved so many lives!" And the Bezdin said, "Yeah, you're right. And we can't take that away from you. Those are big zechusim. Here's the problem. You shot yourself in the foot. You sold your mitzvahs to the butcher. And now, in 24 hours, you're going to the hot place." So the lady said, my husband came to me in a dream. He's screaming. He's shaking. He said, take a ruble, give the butcher back his ruble, and get my mitzvahs back immediately. And the lady says, I'll tell you the truth. First time I had the dream, I didn't pay attention. But every single night, he's coming, he's yelling, he's shrieking, he's screaming. Could you tell me, butcher, is there any truth to the story? And the butcher said, absolutely. I remember like yesterday. So the woman says, so here's the ruble. The butcher says, you got to be kidding me. I'm a simple butcher. I barely have any mitzvahs. And you're telling me in the Bezdin, Shamala, they paskin, that your husband has a lot of mitzvahs? So there's no way I'm giving them back to you. I bought them fair and square. I mean, chayai koidem. I'm sorry, lady. The mitzvahs are mine. I can't give them back. And that night, the doctor comes to the lady in a dream. And he's shrieking, he's screaming, you got to go to a din Torah, you got to take him to the Rav. The next day, the Ridvaz gets a knock on his door. It's the lady. The lady tells him the whole story. The Ridvaz takes it seriously. He says, in that case, we're going to have a din Torah. The town is abuzz. It's the talk of the town. There's a din Torah between the wealthy woman and the butcher. What is it about? Whether the butcher is entitled to keep the olam haba of this wealthy doctor. The whole city gathers in the Beis HaKnesses. This is the case of the year. The butcher presents his case. The woman presents her case. The Ridvaz says, give me 30 minutes. I need to deliberate. There is tension in the courtroom. The tension is palpable. 30 minutes later, he returns and he says the psak has 3 parts to it. Part 1, the sale of the doctor is batal. The sale is not legitimate. You could hear the collective sigh of relief. Baruch Hashem. The doctor is going to get his olam haba back. The Ridvaz explains, olam haba is not tangible. It's not transferable. Olam haba is the light, the illumination that a person acquires by doing a mitzvah. You can't give it to someone else. You can't sell it to someone else. The Ridvaz says it's like you hire a forester. Let's say you hire someone to chop wood in the forest. And you owe him $500. So the forester could say, okay, you owe me $500. Instead of the $500, give the $500 to Pliny, give it to somebody else. But, the forester was chopping wood in the forest for 30 days. And he's out there in the fresh mountain air. And he's exercising, and he's breathing in the healthy air. And he's standing in the sun. And the forester is gaining good health. Could the forester transfer that good health and that exercise and that sunshine to somebody else? Of course not. It became part of his personality. It became part of his being. He can't transfer that. So too says the Ridvaz, the doctor cannot transfer the olam haba to the butcher. Baruch Hashem, the almana breathes a sigh of relief. Baruch Hashem, everybody is calmed down. But says the Ridvaz, part 2, the doctor lost his chelek in olam haba. Everyone gasps. Said the Ridvaz, Yeshaya tells us, Tzidkas hatzadik lo tatzilenu b'yom pishav, that a person's mitzvahs don't necessarily always help them. The Gemara says that if someone is mischaret, if somebody regrets their wrongdoing, they will not get olam haba. Says the Ridvaz, the fact that the doctor was mevazeh his mitzvahs and was willing to sell his mitzvahs for a ruble, that means he didn't value his Torah, he didn't value his mitzvahs, he was mevazeh it, he was mischaret on it. Ein loy chelek lo'olam haba. And the almana now is crying, and the courtroom is a gasp. And then the Ritva says, but there's one more segment to this court case. This court case is such a Kiddush Hashem. Because until this court case, Olam Haba is just words. It's just an idea that people talk about, and people read about, and maybe occasionally people may even think about it. But it was never real to people. It was not something that people worried about. It's not something people lived with an awareness of. But now, because of this court case, now Olam Haba became a tangible reality. Now Olam Haba became something that's on people's minds. People are worried about it. People are thinking, am I going to have Olam Haba? And who is mezakeh the city and thinking about Olam Haba? The doctor. So even though the doctor lost his chelek in Olam Haba, the doctor is going to have a big chelek in Olam Haba because al yadoi, he was mezakeh the city in recognizing and appreciating and understanding the reality of Olam Haba. Yes, we all believe in Olam Haba, and we all talk about Olam Haba. But because it's so well known and it's so obvious, it's not a reality to us. We don't live with it. We don't feel it. And when it comes to making decisions in life, should I apply myself to my learning, or maybe I'll take it easy and I'll start learning maybe in a few years from now? What should I do with my life? How should I speak to my friends? How should I speak to my family? What should I get involved in? Yeah, we believe in Olam Haba, but if it would be a reality to us, if we would live with it, it would drastically affect the decisions we make in every aspect of our life. So you'll say, why can't I have both? I want Olam Hazeh, and I want Olam Haba. And the answer is, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. As long as you know what the focus is, as long as you know what the objective is, as long as you know what the goal is. But the Chovos HaLevavos writes, and he tells us very powerful words. Chovos HaLevavos says in the Shar Cheshbon HaNefesh, Ka'asher lo yischabru b'kli echad hamayim v'ha'esh. The same way, water and fire cannot coexist in one kli. Kein lo tischaber b'leiv hamamin avas olam hazeh the avas ha'olam haba. So too, in the heart of a believer, it cannot coexist the love of this world and the love of the world to come. Yes, you could eat your breakfast and you eat gesundheit and enjoy it and eat with appetite and eat b'te'avon and you make a bracha rishona and you make a bracha achroina, and there's nothing wrong with being besimcha, and we have to be besimcha in this world. But the question is, what do you want? Which world do you love? You could only love one. Olam hazeh or Olam haba. And that is the fundamental question in life. Says Rav Itzla Petterberg, if a person mistakenly thinks that the purpose of this world is to be healthy and to make money and to eat a lot and to have fun and to enjoy myself, then you look at the Yom Noram and it doesn't make any sense. Why would the Rebbeinu Shalom first judge me how much money I'm going to make and how healthy I'm going to be, and only then be mechaper my averos? It's not fair. It's backward. First should come Yom Kippur, and then should come Rosh Hashanah. Why would the Rebbeinu Shalom judge me while I still have my averos, and then mechaper my averos after the judgment? But the reason why we have this question is because we live in a world that screams out, Olam hazeh, Olam hazeh, Olam hazeh. everywhere you go, everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, everything screams out at us. This world, this world, this world. So we don't understand why is Rosh Hashanah before Yom Kippur, but says Rabbi Petterberg, the Ribbon Shalom Bechastoi. He gave us Yomim Noraim because he understands and recognizes that this world is about getting to the next world. Olam hazeh doime lefroiz dar b'fnei ha'olam haba. Now, here's the problem. The ikar for olam haba is how clean our neshama is. Do we have mitzvahs? Are we able to do tshuva for our aveiros? And really, the focus should be Yom Kippur. It's all about Yom Kippur. Here's the problem. If the Rebbeinu Shalom would start off giving us a Yom Kippur, and the first day of Yom Naram would be Yom Kippur, we would come to shul, and we'd say, hey, Dad, Mom, what am I supposed to do today? And they say, you need to fast to get off your chatoim. And you say, chatoim? What's wrong with my chatam? It's not good for Olam Haba. You say, Olam Haba? What's that? Who's that? Where's that? I live in this world. I live in Olam Hazeh. It's all about this world. If the Rebbeinu Shalom would start off the Yomim Naram with Yom Kippur would be meaningless, because who thinks about Olam Haba? So Rebbeinu Shalom gave us a warm-up, and the warm-up is Rosh Hashanah. And we go to shul, and you say, hey, Abba, Ima, why am I going to shul? And Abba and Ima says, because you want to have good health this year, you want to have money this year, you want to have food this year. Hashem's judging us today. Okay, so these are things, we know what that means. We know what health is, we know what food is, we know what pleasure is. So we go to shul and we daven, Hashem, judge us well for this year. That's a warm-up. So we come to the shul and we start davening and we start thinking about ourselves. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Zeir git kinderlach, nice job, but that's only step one. But this is all a warm-up for the most important day of the year. And the most important day of the year is Yom Kippurim. And you know what Yom Kippur is? The Bnei Yissaschar writes, the same way we have no understanding and description what Olam Haba is. In the Torah, in the beginning of Parshas Achrei Mos, it does not tell you the date of Yom Kippur. It doesn't say it's in the 7th month. It doesn't say it's on the 10th day. It's just a day. You know what Yom Kippur is? Says the Bnei Yissaschar, the Rebbeinu Shalom takes a day out of Olam Haba. Olam Haba, there's no eating, there's no drinking, there's no strife. And the Rebbeinu Shalom takes a day out of Olam Haba and he puts it down in this world. And then we get a little bit of a flavor and a little bit of a taste for the world to come. And we start to see and we start to feel what our objective is in this world, what our purpose is in this world. And when we have one day a year where Olam Haba is staring us in the face, on that day it becomes a little bit easier to set our goals correctly, and to steer ourselves correctly, and to plot the course of the rest of the year correctly. If I could just conclude with a story. It was in the final days of the Holocaust, and it was in Auschwitz, and there were a group of Yisoimim there, and the Germans were telling them, look kids, your hour will never come, we're going to exterminate you. And the Russians were coming, we could hear the gunshots, we could hear the artillery, and the Germans were saying, we're going to knock you off, we're going to kill you, Bochrim, before the Russians come. And before we knew it, all of a sudden we see the Russians heading into the camp, and the German soldiers were making a dash for their life, and we were free. Suddenly we were free. And one of the boys said that more than the pain of not having food, and more than the pain of not having drink, it was the freezing, biting cold. It was so cold for years and years. You could feel it in your bones. And this boy said he ran to one of the storehouses and he put on one of the German guards' warm fur coat and a warm fur hat. And for the first time in 5 years, he felt the warmth in his bones. And he was B'simcha, and everyone was clapping for the Russians. We're free, we're free, we're free. And then suddenly, this boy says, I felt something grabbing on my shoulder. And I turned around, and it was a Russian soldier, and he said, you're a German guard, come with me. And he put me on a cattle car together with a bunch of Nazis. And that's it. From freedom to near certain death. No question. They thought I was a Russian soldier, a German soldier. I was together with all the Nazis. And I'm screaming out, help me, help me. Ich bin a Yid, ich bin a Yid. And the guard said, yeah, right. That's what all the Nazis were saying. Ich bin a Yid, ich bin a Yid. And the train was moving, and there was a guard walking back and forth. And this boy said, I looked at the face of the guard. It looked like he had a Jewish face. So I cried out to him, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And he stopped. And he looked at me. And he walked away. And 2 hours later he came back. And he said, you're a Jew? He said, Ich bin a Yid, ich bin a Yid. He said, you went to Cheder? He said, of course. What's the first Mishnah in Shas? So I said, Me'imosai kol nishma ba'arvis. He said, get out of here. Leave, you're free. I said, Adank there, thank you so much. He said, don't thank me. Thank Shema Yisrael. Could you imagine what this Bacher felt like? Where moments before he was free, and now he's being accused of being a Nazi, on the verge of freedom, where he was almost killed. Do you know how alone he must have felt? You know how scared he felt? You know how out of place he felt with all those Nazis? Do you know how the Neshama feels in this world? You know how alone the Neshama feels? How frightened the Neshama feels? How desperate the Neshama is in this world? All day long, the Neshama is crying out, Ich bin a Yid, ich bin a Yid, ich bin a Yid. I just want Torah, I want Kedusha, I want Yiras Shamayim, I want Ruchnius. And the Guf says, no, you want food, you want this world, you want pleasure. And the Neshama is so lonely. The Neshama is in such pain. No one is listening to the cry of the Neshama. But it comes one day a year, and the Neshama cries out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The Neshama tells the Guf, could you please listen to me for a change? Could you listen to what I have to say? I don't want Olam Hazeh. It's Olam Haba that I want. That's the limud of Yom Kippur. The limud of Olam Hazeh Doime Lefroizdar Bifnei HaOlam Haba. We have one day a year that Olam Haba comes down and stares us in the face and helps us and directs us, Be'ezus Hashem, in the right path for the rest of the year. That should be Haba Aleinu L'Toiva. I want to wish everyone a Gemar Chasima Toiva. The hour is late. There are a few questions that came in. Should I address those questions? What's the, how are we doing with time? Should I unmute everyone?
Yeah, we're please continue with the questions. We're fine.
A few questions? Okay.
All right.
So,
Baruch
Tiyah, Baruch Tiyah. Let's see. Okay, so I have two questions over here. I see there are a bunch of questions that are on the chat. So those questions I can answer. Do I have permission to record? Yes. Retroactively, L'mafreya, you're allowed to record. Why did Bezin Shalmala consider it valid? As they say, Kasha Namaisa. What can I tell you? How did Esav sell his Bechira to Yaakov? Also, these are all good questions. Ayin B'Ktsois HaChoshen. So Ktsois discusses that. He quotes the Shas Chuvas Rivash. Okay, but just two timely questions. The question is like this. Really, the questions belong to your Rabbeim and your Rosh Yeshiva, but with Bershuschem, we'll share some short thoughts, and you could discuss with your Rabbeim. Seeing as here in Eretz Yisrael, the Yom Kippur Tefillos will most likely be shortened for health risks, or if people need to daven outdoors in the heat, and instead of being in shul almost the whole day, we are left with much more time in our hands than usual Yom Kippur, what should we do during the extra time? Wow, Baruch Hashem, this is the best possible problem. Extra time. Halavai, I wish we had such problems of extra time. What should you do on Yom Kippur? The answer is Rebbe Shalom is giving you a big chesed. Because even though davening is very important on Yom Kippur, but davening is not really the avodas hayom. The avodas hayom of Yom Kippur is tshuva. And if you have more time on your hands, you're very ashreichem v'toivlach. You have time to do tshuva. So what is tshuva? The Rambam says tshuva is, number one, you have to stop doing the avera. That's the most important thing. And vidoy. And charata, you regret what you did, and you're makabel not to do it again. The only thing is, it's very hard to do. It's very difficult for a person to make major changes in 1 year. What is the makar of the story with the Ridbaz? I saw in the Sefer, Chaim Sheyesh Bahem on Pirkei Avos, but I don't know the original makar. But basically, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter tells us a very important piece of advice, and this is a big Yeshua for Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, tshuva is not all or nothing. Which means, let's say, to say that this coming year I'm not going to speak any Lashon Hara, halavai, we should be able to do that, but it might not be so practical. To say that this year I'm not going to waste even 1 minute, I'm not going to have 1 minute of Bittul Torah, not very likely. To say this year I'm going to daven every Shemona Esrei b'kavana, it ain't happening. So, what is the Eitzah? Rabbi Yisrael Salanter basically says that a mitzvah and avera could be broken up into many levels. There are times that it's easy not to do the avera, and there are times that it's hard not to do the avera. For example, sometimes when a person comes home from yeshiva and they're very tired and they're very worn out, to say, okay, run to the Beis Medrash and spend the rest of the night learning, might not be so easy. But on Shabbos afternoon, maybe after you took a nap and you have a few hours, it's not so hard to learn. I mean, what else are you going to do? So, for a person to say, I'm not going to waste 1 second for the rest of the year, that's very hard. But a person is most accountable for doing an avera when it's easy not to do the avera. So if a person doesn't learn on Shabbos, that's different than not learning at a time that it's hard to learn. So the most important thing for a person to be makabel is this year, when it's easy to learn, I'm going to try to learn. This year on Shabbos afternoon, I'm going to try to learn. This year, by 1 Shabbos Suda, I'm not going to speak Lashon Hara. Now, we hope you're not going to speak any Lashon Hara. But it's easy to be makabel, not to do it at a specific time. And that's what we're most accountable for. We're most accountable for doing an avera when it's easy not to do the avera. The Gemara says in Menachos, Kasha anshay shalavan yosemi anshay shal tcheles. The punishment for not having the white strings is more severe than not having the blue strings, because the blue strings are expensive and they cost a lot of money. White strings are much easier to get. The ikar avoida of tshuva is to try to stop doing averos when it's easy not to do the avera. That is a major salvation, a major Yeshua. And if you have time on Yom Kippur, ashreichem, sit down, think about how much time you spend in Talmud Torah. Think about the way you daven. Think about your kibbut avayim. Think about the Bein Adam LaChaveroi. There's a lot to think about. Sometimes in shul, we don't have time. This year, if you're home, if the davening is quicker, it's going to be the best Yom Kippur of your life. And on that note, there's one more very important question here. And again, speak to your Rabbeim. Tayadua b'shua achron yeshiva avra l'meida merachok. Basically, long distance learning. Okay, I have a translation here. Good. So there was a poll taken, and the most optimistic evaluation is that people are learning 30% in terms of time of what they would be learning in yeshiva, and a much lower quality. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us in this situation that it's very difficult to learn, and it's very difficult to daven, and it's very difficult to serve Hashem the way we would want. And here it is, it's Aser Simei Teshuva, when we want to learn, we want to daven, we want to serve Hashem, and it's like Hashem is Al Tashlicheni Mofanechli. It looks like He doesn't want it, Chas v'shalom. So, I think there's another way to look at this. And that is, Chas v'shalom. Hashem is giving us the greatest opportunity of our life. How's that? It says in Avos Rav Nassan that Pamachas b'tzar mimea pa'amim shaloi b'tzar. Doing a mitzvah when it's difficult is equal to 100 mitzvahs when it's not difficult. In other words, what's more valuable? Learning for 99 hours in yeshiva when it's easy, or learning for 1 hour at home when it's hard? The answer is, it's much greater. It's greater to learn for an hour at home when it's hard than 99 hours in yeshiva. So the Rebbe Shalom did us a big chesed. He said, look, if you stay in yeshiva, so there are only 5-6 days of Aser Simei Teshuva in yeshiva, and you can only be in yeshiva to learn, 5 to 10 hours a day, and you're limited. This way you go home. And it's very hard to learn at home, because your sister is driving you up the wall, and your parents are on top of you. Are you learning? You're not learning. And you have distractions, and you have things that are taking your mind away from learning. And if you learn for 1 hour at home, that is greater than learning for 99 hours in yeshiva. So Rebbe Shalom is mezakeh us. He's giving us an opportunity. If you daven b'kavana under these circumstances, it's much more valuable. Who knows if in the course of our life, halavai, who knows if in the course of our life, when al acharmeya ve'esrim shana, which year of our life is going to be oimed for us more than any other year? It might be that Tav Shin Pei Aleph, the Aser Simei Teshuva Tav Shin Pei Aleph, when we were home and we had to listen on the computer and we could barely hear and it was staticky and it was hard to concentrate. Maybe this year will be the biggest zechus of any year in our whole life. And b'chlal, we know there's a yesod that chishev la'asais mitzvah. Let's say somebody wants to do a mitzvah, and v'nenas, and they have extenuating circumstances, and they can't do the mitzvah. The Gemara says, "Mala alav ki lo asa." So if you're at home and you say, "I wish I was in yeshiva. I wish I was learning more. I wish I was davening better in the yeshiva." So Rebbe Shalom says, "Fine. I see you really wish, and you can't do it. So I consider it like you did it." But we'll end off with this. There's a big chiddush from Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshetz that actually somebody who can't do a mitzvah and wishes they could do a mitzvah, and Hashem gives you the mitzvah, that's even greater than doing the mitzvah yourself. Because when you do the mitzvah yourself, if you would be in yeshiva, it could be you still wouldn't do the mitzvah perfectly. Maybe you would be a little distracted, and maybe you wouldn't be with full avas Hashem and with full yiras Hashem. But when you want to do a mitzvah, then Hashem gifts you the mitzvah. Hashem gives you a matana. And when Hashem gives you a matana, He gives you a perfect mitzvah. So be'ezus Hashem, this year it's mamish an incredible opportunity. First of all, it's difficult, l'fum tzara agra, pamachas b'tzar, mimea pa'amim shaloi b'tzar, chishev la'asais mitzvah. And in your zechus, we in America, we could go to shul on Yom Kippur, we could go to yeshiva. Maybe in your zechus, maybe be'ezus Hashem, the Mesifta and Ramat Beit Shemesh will bring Mashiach this year, we hope. I think, looking at such choshev talmidim, I think you guys have what it takes to be mezakeh all of Klal Yisrael. And Ashreichem, you have such a wonderful Rosh Yeshiva, and Rabbeim, and Menahalim, and Chaverim. And we hope you'll bring good news. And as soon as Mashiach comes, please call me up right away. I heard that somebody finally bought El Al, and I'll hopefully take the first flight I can. And we should be Zoiche, the Sukkos, to be Oile Regel together, B'Shalayim Habnuya. Thank you so much, and Bracha V'Hatzlacha, Agmar Chasima Taiva.
Thank you very much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.